Welcome, Brandon, to the Leaders Who Care series, man.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here.
Well, no, we're privileged to have you here. I love getting, young voices, if you will. I'm getting a little bit tired of saying young all the time because I don't know what the opposite. I think I'm supposed to be the opposite of that now, but we're happy to have you here and share all the cool stuff you're doing and the impact that you're making. Best way to start is if you could briefly introduce yourself. This in terms of not what you're doing yet, but who you are, where you're from originally, where you are now. If you want to tell us your favorite color, what the hell? And or if there's something you've never told anybody in the world and you want to reveal it, this is the time to do it. But give us a sense of who Brandon is.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is a little bit outside of Washington, D.C. I'm currently a third-year student at American University. And, growing up, I guess I have a funny anecdote from growing up and when I was a kid, which I think the only people who know are a few of my older friends and my parents. But growing up, I was a bit of a small business owner. And I mean that both in the sense that my business was very small and I was also a very small kid. And so, me and another neighborhood kid, we'd shovel snow in the winter and during summers, we'd wash cars. And I think that definitely there's something natural for me in nonprofit work because did start my first one at 5 or 6. I ran a non-for-profit lemonade stand, raising
Yeah, of
money.
course.
Of course, it was the most natural thing to 5-year-old me was let's make a not-for-profit lemonade stand and raise money that I would then use to buy care packages for U.S. soldiers overseas. Um, and I would say this is definitely a lot better known about me is that I've always had a sort of immense curiosity about just about anything in life. My intellectual curiosity, you could say, also did have the potential to get me in a little bit of trouble from time to time as a kid. I remember one thing I was really immensely curious about, I think in 5th grade, was parkour and how, for example, people might be able to run up certain walls and get to the roof. And so, with some very equally curious friends, we ran up the wall of this barn that was in the back field of my old middle school. We go up the few feet. I think it was 10 feet tall, which now doesn't feel very big, but to again a very small kid, that was an immense challenge. And so we satisfied my curiosity. We did make it up to the roof.
Wow.
And uh, while my parents certainly supported my curiosity generally, I don't think they supported it there. And I can also say the staff at the school who talked to me directly after this experience most definitely did not support my intellectual curiosity in that moment. But really, all jokes aside, I do think that's something that really has been able to lead me to this moment. And that's just a small little anecdote that is a little lesser known about my curiosity.
I like it. Climb every mountain except you did the barn or something.
Yeah. And climb almost every barn, just maybe not ones that are school property.
Yeah, that's probably a good choice. They probably don't like the liabilities, probably what they're worried about and stuff. Do you have siblings, brothers, sisters?
So I love that question. So I grew up as an only child. My parents, they divorced a little bit before high school. My father, he's since remarried. And the really, really lovely woman who he's now married to, she has a son named Ormsby, who's a little bit older than I am. And, we really do love each other as brothers. We may have met only when I was in high school and he was starting off college. But it worked out really well for us. I think he's always wanted a younger brother. I've always wanted a brother of any kind, and now we got one. From something I hear from every single person who's got a sibling is how growing up there's all the sibling quabbling and fighting and all that. We kind of skipped that phase and just went straight to two mature siblings who very much love each other. And so, now I really love to say that I do have a brother, but I did grow up an only child.
No, that's hey, maybe you got the best of both worlds. You had your own space, and then you had the brother, and none of that rivalry. When if I ever told you this, my daughter-in-law's from Denmark, and they don't use the word step there, step brother, step sister, step this. They use the word bonus.
Oh, I love that.
Not bad, eh? Yeah.
Not
Especially
bad
since
at all.
movies and TV shows always put the step as somebody evil, right? It seems. So bonus brother, bonus sister, bonus parent. So you can tell him he's been a big bonus for you there next time you see him.
I
Um,
think I might just have to.
yeah, that would be a bonus for everybody. Let's chat a little bit about your journey. You're studying international service at American University,
Mhm.
as you mentioned. You know, based on your internships that I saw, it seems to make sense that you're studying that. But were you envisioning this path for yourself for a long time? Number one, and tell us about some of your internships, which seemed adventurous, important, and I'm assuming invaluable experiences.
Yeah, definitely. So something that has always been incredibly important to me is this sort of value of service. And so the entire time I was growing up, as I was entering college, I knew whatever the job is, that's going to be the end goal, is going to be something where I'm doing a service to this country, um, and really just to other people. Uh,
Hmm.
the way I've always seen that, I've always had a very big interest in international relations, and I think if you asked me this question up until a few months ago, I would have answered with full certainty that I intend to work in the foreign policy field within the US government. That was the big dream. I still would really love to do it. Um, but to be honest, recently with the rise of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all these forms of hate on college campuses, really, it seems throughout the Western world, it's made me a bit worried. And that's really why I've decided to start this newest nonprofit, and that's the newest sort of step in my journey. What I've really come to see is the embers of war that have really sparked in the Middle East also seem to have sparked really a rise in hatred a few thousand miles away here at our home.
Right.
And really, I'm determined to protect our future generations. And I've decided the best way is to become sort of a firefighter. And that's where this nonprofit comes in. Obviously, as mentioned, I study international relations here at American University. My specialization is foreign policy and international security in the Middle East and North Africa. I've studied Arabic, and I'm really passionate about U.S. Mideast policy. And something that has been a really big disappointment for me, and unfortunately, most students who I've talked to, not just at American University, but at a lot of colleges in the United States, is that there's sheer lack of conversation around Middle East issues and the impact that has had, especially on the issues of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And so I have sort of determined that the best way to really tackle this issue is to create a space for genuine learning on the Middle East, devoid of a lot of the prejudices that have infiltrated what seems like the majority of conversations on the MENA region, which is Middle East and North Africa. And so really by creating this, I'm seeking to safeguard the future of American Mideast policymaking. And so essentially, we are an undergraduate Middle East focused think tank. We provide professional opportunities, networking, and most importantly, a place to learn. And I believe that one of the key reasons conversations about the Middle East are so hostile on campuses is because there are certain areas where basic understanding is lacked. And because of that, students can kind of easily fall into this sort of black and white mindset, which will disallow you from having the difficult conversations in the first place. And so I really do see the antidote to that to be learning and conversation.
Yeah.
And while that's the point of college, in the first place, it seems that unbridled hatred is really impeding students from receiving that sort of education, receiving those opportunities which they so deserve. And so essentially my model for the nonprofit, as I mentioned, it provides a few different opportunities, including also the opportunity to get published. The idea is we are drawing in the students who matter most for the future of American foreign policy making, which are students who are taking international relations. They're taking classes on the Middle East. They're studying Arabic. It's the people who are aspiring to become leaders in their own right once they graduate and they move on. What I want to do is attract those people to my think tank. We're starting campus chapters at different universities, and we are providing spaces to learn from different speakers, really in the prism of learning and conversation.
So
And
I
I
want to interrupt. I
believe,
want to interrupt you for a
yeah.
second. I have a question related to that.
Mhm.
Um, how can I put this? So fifth element, we found a fifth element on the premise that leaders and organizations can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. So clearly you're an early leader on that because you're investing your energy and your acquired knowledge from the internships, et cetera, towards supporting all ages and positions of people in different ways, where they can achieve their personal or professional goals and or needs. Talk to me about what and who stands out as being the most impactful, and tell us in terms of even what internship maybe have stood out as most impactful to what you're doing now, and now who and what stands out as most impactful, and then third, and the impact it's had on you.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, there's a few people that have had really, really great influence on my life. And I've also grown up with some medical issues, which I'll touch on in a moment, but that's also been one of the biggest defining, had the biggest defining impact on me. So my grandfather, he escaped the Holocaust in 1940 and came to New York City. He raised me on really this value of service and the need to give back. He always told me about how America opening its gates to him saved his life and the life of his family. And ever since getting here, he dedicated his entire life to service and serving his community as a doctor in New York City.
Well,
He really implanted that in his children and on me. And that's something that has really guided me and guided my life path. As I mentioned, it's really one of my biggest interests. Uh, and just as he implanted that on his kids, my mother was certainly included. And she led a really great career as a surgeon and then in the public health policy until she had a troublesome son named Brandon.
way to go.
And
Nice job.
thank you. When I was born with some, very life-threatening medical issues. I had some life-threatening reflux where I end up waking up choking in the middle of the night, and 1,001 medical issues. And so she stopped her entire career, threw it all out the window to make sure that I would make it. And I know for a fact that had she had not done that, I don't think I'd be alive right now to be talking to you or be on Leaders Who Care. She really threw everything away to make sure that I made it. And that's something that has had a really, really immense impact on me, both in my philosophy, and also just with really a very big thankfulness to be here in the first place. And so with these medical issues, it's definitely been very tough. I had something called cyclic vomiting disease, where I think it's actually very well named because it's a cycle of vomiting. Some abdominal migraines and something called mitochondrial disease. And so growing up, I've certainly had my fun, but at the same time, I was very impacted. And there was a lot of things in life that I just was not doing because of my medical issues. And I sort of had this philosophy that, uh, I'm very unwell and, it's okay that I'm not doing as much. I'll wait for the doctors to get some life-saving medicine. I'll get on that, and then I will truly live. When I was about to go into high school, I went to this place called Camp CIMEA, and it's a camp for kids with really extreme medical issues or kids with cancer. I was there, and there was this kid named Moshe who was there. I don't remember the name of his disease or his syndrome,
Mhm.
but essentially, as he got older, his body became more and more paralyzed. And so he went from being able to walk around to now being wheelchair bound, only having partial mobility of his arms. He breathes out of a tube. He can't eat. He can't drink. He's someone who, by the textbook definition, should be having a pretty bad life, should not be happy. Yet, I talked to him. He would not trade his life for the world. He's actually a DJ in New York City right now. He is really happy. He knows who he is. And it made me realize, this guy, he's got something so much worse than me, at least in the textbook definition.
Right.
Yet he is so happy and he is out there, he is living his life. So then I asked my question, what's stopping me from doing that? And I realized nothing's stopping me from doing that. And so over a period of few years, I really did change my mindset from waiting for someone else to save me to doing it myself. And once I did that, I feel like I've been able to truly uplift myself. And that's really one of the big things now that I'm dedicated to doing is helping to uplift other people.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. It always puts things in perspective for ourselves, doesn't it? When you see things like that, and I mean, you can't, we all complain at some point or another, but at the end of the day, it's what they call the first world problems versus the third world problems, right? And stuff. So, and good recognition to him for having the resilience and the toughness to do that. It's not easy, and it's role model, triple A, if you will. So so a shout out to him. So you're gonna have to make sure he sees this and tell him we're proud of him, type of deal. um so going a little bit further, the fourth industrial revolution is said to be all about tech. Now AI for sure, but before it was the internet and tech and whatnot. And the talk is that the fifth is about humanity, really. And we focus on all that all the time: impact and talent to get really the best results, more enduring, etc. What's your experience in the fact that you're working in schools, secondary and college, based on the stuff you're doing, I believe? What's your experience working with business and academic leaders that you run into in both high school and college, and how they're looking at economic and social impact results happening at the same time, with respect to tech and data being used a lot?
Yeah, no, so I have been very thankful to have the exposure to business leaders and academic leaders. And, one of the biggest things that I've been doing with this sort of think tank idea is partnering with as many leaders as possible to really bring as many perspectives as possible for students who participate with my organization to be able to hear and learn from. And so I've had certainly a very amazing experience there. And I would say one of the biggest ways in which I've been doing that is creating different speaker events. And so something that has been really amazing also on a sort of separate note is I'm very passionate on working against anti-Semitism. And so as part of that, I'm creating a global campus program for the American Jewish Committee. And given that it is global in and of itself, where we're essentially connecting Jewish students together from multiple different countries, including the United States. And as part of that, I've had the very unique privilege of getting to work with leaders in a lot of different countries, including the US, Britain, South Africa, Australia. Uh, it's been a truly amazing experience to get to learn from some really, really talented individuals. And, as especially with tech, like that's the biggest thing that's able to make this happen in the first place. Because when it just comes down to having Zoom meetings in the first place that are going to be allowing for students to get together from so many different countries. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that
Do you
like
feel
a
your
change.
conversations touch on both economic and social impact when you're talking in any way, or what do the conversations look like?
So it most definitely depends. I think that I've had a lot of more social related conversations, particularly in my work on anti-Semitism. However, um, you know, at the end of the day, economics also has like such an ability to uplift. And I've been able to be present in some advocacy missions to different business leaders with the American Jewish Committee to talk about different ways that business leaders can incorporate
Right.
like training against all forms of hate, but most definitely including anti-Semitism, and meeting with different business councils, which has been a truly fantastic opportunity. And sort of taking a top-down approach with different business leaders to try and disseminate through their own corporations, things like that,
It's good for
and sort of
business, isn't it?
incentivizing. Yeah, at the end of the day, if you have workers who hate each other, that's not good for business. But
No.
if what's good for business is people who are willing to work together and are open-minded, 100%. And what also is good for business is, working with, uh, when it comes to uplifting very diverse groups, which is something that I've gotten to work with some really diverse people. Not only is that something that I think is the right thing to do, but it's also a great business decision in the first place. And when you have a team of very like-minded people, you're going to go about solving problems in maybe a similar way. But when you have people who are coming from very diverse backgrounds, um, you have some very diverse ways of thinking about every issue. And that's something that has also been really great for me, when working with so many different leaders in the economic community and different social scenes, is raising, as the important issues come up, being better prepared to solve them because I have a greater group of thinkers behind me.
Well, you give me a good segue, so I always appreciate when somebody gives me a good segue. Um, there's a lot going on about AI right now. It's fast moving. Everybody's encouraging people to use AI. Across all sectors. We currently working with AI for good leaders who are interested in mental health and healthcare and changing that with AI. But there are always going to be, bad actors out there, people trying to manipulate and whatnot, which doesn't mean you don't do it. You just have to, you have to do it properly and positively. Have you seen, in your conversations, have you seen, not to be cute, leaders who care about being responsible and ethical in how things are going on? That would be my first question. But also, you mentioned people coming together, diverse places, diverse cultures. There's going to be conflict. The question is, conflict can be negative if you want it to be, or it could be looked upon as different ideas, different perspectives of things. And I know you just took the non-conflict workshop, so I'm going to throw this one in there. It's all about how to look at conflict differently, listen and learn the different ideas you have and come to a best case scenario to move forward. So that's a whole mouthful, but so two things. Are you finding people you're talking to excited about using AI, but responsibly and ethically? And because there's so much diversity and opinions, looking at conflict, can you help them now look at conflict differently to come to best results?
Yeah, so I guess going from the second question to the first, uh, I I definitely feel that I am, since taking non-conflict, and since you've educated excuse me, since you've educated me about non-conflict a few weeks ago, and I've since gotten to take your workshop, I'll say non-conflict has become one of my new favorite initiatives, and I do think that effective training on conflict resolution and how you actually have a conversation that can stop conflict in the first place, that's incredibly important. I definitely think that after taking it myself, that's something that I feel more comfortable doing, and it's something that I think that um, I can really help other people, and not just myself, but other people who will take your course and take non-conflict. I do see that as a way that we can uh, really to have conflict be productive, because at the end of the day, conflict can be like really between two different kinds of ideas. And if with everything, I do believe truly that there can be some sort of middle ground where even if you don't agree necessarily, you can disagree respectfully and
Mm-hmm.
come away with anything, because you can come away from a conflict with a better understanding. And the way that that happens is based completely on your mindset. And if you do have a mindset where, sure, I may disagree with this person, sure, I might be getting into some sort of disagreement right now, but if I truly do take the time to learn more about them and learn about why it is they believe what they believe, then I can actually come out of that much stronger. And so I do think that through taking non-conflict, that allows me to have that sort of second option happen much easier. And I think that it's definitely something that's very important. And I do feel better prepared to tackle that. And I think that, especially providing different training opportunities for students, that's incredibly important now. And given my nonprofit, the entire idea is creating more effective conversation and spaces for learning for college students. It's something that is incredibly important, is being able to have these sorts of conversations. And I do think that if you approach like a source of disagreement with the objective of learning rather than the objective of saying why you disagree, then you're going to come away from that a lot more just in a much more productive way. And so that's something I'm trying to do is choose these different like sources of conflict on the Middle East, for example, come at it with the objective of learning. And that's my way that I am really trying to make that sort of positive effect on conflict. Um, and on your first question with AI, to
Yeah.
be honest, a lot of the people who I have worked with are not the heavyweights in AI. And so I can't speak to it as well, but what I can speak to is definitely a lot of students who I'm around who do use it a little less responsibly. Um, and I do think that it's something that does warrant some uh, definitely some people to take a look at, but I
Yeah.
can't speak to as well on the sort of heavyweight level.
No, I didn't expect you to speak on the heavyweight level for that for sure. So it's interesting because um it's all ties together, and this is a disruptive times, and there is rampant hate that's spurred on, etc. And sometimes people think you just what are you going to do? You can't. There is rampant hate. However, what we've seen in business and now with non-flick and programs like that is that people really appreciate someone else who really actively listens to them, and are really interested in listening to them and not interrupting and not saying they're wrong, but because we all want to feel like somebody really heard us, right? And so I think what you're doing in the colleges and the high schools is really important, because if you learn that process rather than you have no process and, well, I'm right, you're wrong, you can tell me whatever you want, but I'm not going to listen to it, is going nowhere, basically. So even on emotional, with long history type of scenarios, which is in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and whatever, we've seen it happen. If you can get people to just say, or not get people to, you have to say, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say. And I've got a process here, we can go through that. And I want to hear what you have to say. And you really actively listen, it does make a big difference. So good job on taking the leadership of that. I just want to ask you one last question before the last question. What are you finding are the perspectives, the attitudes and discussions going on with all the people you talk to?
Yeah, so definitely, I would say it's all across the spectrum that I get to hear working with such a diverse group, is like both globally and more locally at my campus. Um,
But you
and
talk about
so
what type of pizza to get, and you have conflict over that, or even going to the highest level and Middle East, conflict.
so definitely some of my favorite conversations have been well, actually, I'll start this way. So, with my sort of efforts to combat anti-Semitism on the global level through creating this college program, as I mentioned, I've had the privilege of getting to work with some really brilliant people from all corners of the globe. And the most important part of that for me has been getting to learn from them about their own perspective on what are the best methods to combat anti-Semitism, and more specifically, what is actually happening in their country in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's been truly fascinating, that when I speak to someone from South Africa versus Australia, I've heard some very different stories,
Yeah, no,
and different thoughts. And so that's been, one way that I've been getting a lot of different perspective, and that's been fascinating. I know on my campus, I've had a lot of very interesting, both debates and conversations on a variety of Middle East issues. I know what's been fascinating is really having some conversations with a few friends from the Gulf region about, say, Israel Palestine, as the very, the favorite conversation on campuses these days. And so having conversations with them has been a truly fascinating and really enriching experience to me. Really, I would say that it's my privilege to get to work with so many different people, to get to hear so many different things. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do, is to surround ourselves
100%.
with a diversity of opinion.
Yep, 100%. And listen and learn, and you can move forward that way. No, I appreciate you saying that. Here's my last question for now. Because as we say in LA, we got to keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel, you know. Gonna do it. A client told me way back when, describing 2020, he said that was the year that flew by slowly, which I thought was a really cool statement. So now we're already in 2024. Briefly, what are you most grateful for and what are you most hopeful for?
Yeah, so I would say I am most grateful for the people who honestly surround me, and that includes my family, my parents, my brother. That it also includes some of my close friends I have at college and some of the people who genuinely believe in me, both in and out of my family. And that is something that has enabled me to do everything that I'm doing right now, from the nonprofit to some of the work on anti-Semitism, is because these people believe in me. And that's something that's incredibly special that I feel just so incredibly grateful to have, and something that also empowers me to keep going and keep moving forward. And something that makes me super hopeful is that, both with this sort of belief, is that I can do everything I can to continue to make a difference. You know, I would say I'm a very unbridled optimist with some tint of realism in there too. And I, I'm really hopeful for the future, both of conversations on campus, um, to eventually improve. And so I'm both optimistic that it will improve, but the tint of realism is I know that that's not going to happen unless we put a lot of effort into making it happen. And so I'm optimistic that I will be able to make a contribution. I'm very also well aware I'm a 21-year-old, so there's a limit. So I know that in order for that to happen, it's working with some really brilliant people. And I'm very optimistic that those brilliant people will come forward and really also take that stand. Many already have, and I know many more will. That's what I'm so optimistic about, in making sure that we can
Well,
really improve the situation on college campuses, both in the US and in some other countries.
no, I'm grateful. I'm grateful and hopeful for the same reason that you are really a leader who cares. And 21's a number. That's all it is. And that you've already made a difference, inspiring me in some of the stuff you're doing and some of the stuff you believe in. So thanks for sharing all you've shared. And we're looking for big things in the future. Way to go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was fantastic.
My pleasure, man.